Good morning, it's today again. Welcome back to Joseph's Reserves. I'm Joseph, and I store 20% of my income in the form of rare coins and precious metals. Right now, 90% feels broken. Shops are selling it around spot and buying it back at way under, and stackers are frustrated. It looks like something went wrong, but what if nothing actually broke? What if we're just seeing the worst part of a cycle that most people never understand? Congratulations to Maestro Metals for being the first to comment on my video yesterday. Y'all go down into the comments to find him and start a conversation. Alright everyone, we need to talk about 90% silver because right now it's getting a lot of hate out there. People are frustrated, confused, and honestly, some feelings got hurt. When you walk into a shop and you see them selling around spot and the buyback is way lower than expected, it feels wrong. It feels like something changed. And today we're going to take a second to talk about what is really happening with 90% silver. What we're seeing is not the death of junk silver. It's just a very specific moment in a very predictable cycle. And if you understand it, it can completely change how you stack moving forward. It's true. Some shops are buying it back at 65% to 75% of spot. And around $65 silver, that's about a $19 spread if you're buying it at spot. And when you see that, it just doesn't feel right. It makes you question things, which isn't a bad thing, but it'll make you wonder what changed or got worse, or if you made the wrong call stacking it in the first place. And I get it. That reaction is completely fair. But before we jump to any conclusions, we need to take a look at what's happening to everything else as well. This situation isn't as simple as 90% silver is bad now. In fact, what we're seeing right now has a lot more to do with how the system works under stress than it does the specific metal itself. One of the biggest things people are missing right now is that it isn't happening just to 90% silver. If you look around, even American Silver Eagles, arguably the most recognizable and liquid silver product out there, are also carrying spreads kind of in that range, somewhere between $17 and $20, depending on where you go. And that's important because it immediately tells you that this isn't isolated. If the most liquid retail product on the market is experiencing a similar condition, then what we're dealing with isn't a failure of the specific product, it's a market condition. And to understand that condition, you'll have to go back to what just happened. Silver ran up, and silver ran up hard. In a condition like this, something very predictable happens. People sell. Not just a few people, not just some people, a lot of people. Longtime stackers take profits, newer stackers get excited and cash out. People who have been sitting on silver for years finally decide to move it. Even people who weren't actively stacking start digging through drawers, collections, or inherited pieces to bring them in. Everything hits the market at once. And what happens? Coin shops don't just get busy, they get flooded. And when shops get flooded, they do what they always do. They move all that metal up the chain. They sell it to wholesalers, and wholesalers sell it to refiners. That's how the system is designed to work. But that system has limits. Refineries don't have infinite capacity. They can only process so much material at one time. And when too much silver hits the system all at once, it doesn't just keep flowing smoothly, it backs up. Refineries get behind, wholesalers get stuck holding the inventory, and shops slow down because they can't move product as easily. And when that happens, prices drop. Even if the spot price doesn't drop, what the shop is actually able to offer will. Not because silver suddenly isn't valuable, but because the system physically cannot handle more supply at the moment. And that's what we experienced. This drop in premium ended up with a drop of actual spot price. And this is where it becomes really important to separate what feels like a problem and what actually is the problem. During this last run-up, it wasn't just 90% silver that got hit. Shops weren't just avoiding the junk silver, they were limiting everything. Generics got hit too. In some cases, shops were paying 10 to 15% back of spot for generic silver, and some shops stopped buying it altogether for a short period. That's not normal behavior for a healthy, flowing market. That's what happens when the entire pipeline gets overwhelmed. So when people were looking at 90% silver right now, look at those buybacks. Something must be wrong with it, is what they're saying. They're missing the bigger picture. What they're really seeing is what happened when everyone tries to sell at the same time. Now, with that said, there's a reason 90% feels like it got hit harder, especially on the buy side. And this is where we need to be honest, because this part matters. From a refinery perspective, 90% silver is less efficient. It's bulkier, it has impurities, it takes more time and effort to process than clean 3/9 material, like bars or rounds. And if you were the refinery already dealing with backlogs, you're going to prioritize the easiest, fastest material to process. And that's 3/9 silver, 4/9 silver in most cases. That's just how the business operates. So, what happened? 90% silver got pushed down on the priority list. Buy prices reflected that. Spreads widened more than they would on cleaner material. And this is where people made the most critical mistake. They take that refinery's perspective and apply it to themselves as a stacker. And those are two completely different worlds. Refineries care about efficiency, margins, throughput, and processing massive volumes of metal. They need uniformity, they need speed, they need scale. You, as a stacker, care about something entirely different. Stackers should care about holding value, flexibility, divisibility, and optionality. So, when the market starts treating 90% silver like a refinery input instead of what it actually is, it creates a disconnect. And that disconnect is exactly what we're seeing right now. Because 90% silver was never meant to compete with 3/9 fine silver in efficiency. That's not its job. It was never meant to be a bulk storage silver. It was never meant to be the easiest thing to melt and refine. 90% silver coinage is fractional, it's recognizable, and it's divisible. It was literally used as money. And those characteristics don't disappear just because refineries don't want it this month. What's really happening right now is that the market is temporarily mispricing 90% silver based on this bottleneck, not based on the long-term role. And if you've been in this space for long enough, you've seen this before. There are times when 90% silver is hot, premiums are high, supply is tight, and everyone wants it. You hear all the reasons why it's the best thing to own. It's fractional, recognizable, it's historical, it's practical. It's hard to find and people are paying for it. And then there are times like now. Supply floods in, demand slows, premiums collapse, buybacks weaken, and suddenly the narrative flips. Now it's inefficient, it's undesirable, and people start to question it. But nothing about the metal has changed. That's one of the most important things to understand. Not just about 90% silver, but about any market. It's the same asset, and that asset can be loved at one point and ignored at another point without any fundamental change. And if you don't recognize that, it's very easy to let the short-term conditions shake your long-term strategy. So what does the future actually look like from here? Not predictions, just reality. The backlog's clear, it always does. Refiners will catch up, and inventory moves through the system again. The pressure will ease, and when that happens, spreads will tighten, buybacks will improve, and the markets will normalize. That doesn't mean that everything goes back to exactly how it was overnight, but it does mean that the extreme conditions we're seeing right now won't last forever. At the same time, 90% silver returns to what it's always been. Fractional silver, recognizable coinage, and a flexible part of a stack. Not the entire strategy, but an important piece of it. And the premiums cycles continues, because it always does. There will be another time when supply is tight, when people want it again, and when the premiums rise. And there will be another time that when things cool off again, that cycle doesn't break, it repeats. Which brings us to the real takeaway from all of this. If this last run-up taught us anything, it's that no single form of silver should carry your entire strategy. Because every type of silver, 90%, generics, eagles, even gold, has strengths and weaknesses depending on the environment. There are times when generics shine because their efficiency and ease to move. But there are also times when 90% shine because of its flexibility and divisibility. There are times where gold shines because of its stability and compact value. And there are always times when each one struggles. That's not a flaw, it's just reality. So instead of asking whether 90% silver is good or bad, the better question is, what role does it play in your stack? Because once you understand that, moments like this stop feeling like failures and start looking like what they actually are, just one phase in a cycle. And right now, we're in the part of a cycle that feels uncomfortable. Wide spreads, weak buybacks, negative sentiment. It's not the exciting part, and it's not the part that people talk about when everything is going up. But it is part of the process. And if you recognize that, if you can stay grounded in the understanding instead of reacting emotionally to what's happening in the moment, you put yourself in a completely different position than most people. Because most people don't think of it this way. Most people follow the sentiment. They feel good when things are hot and uncomfortable when things cool off. And they make decisions based off that. But stacking, real stacking, isn't about chasing what feels good in this moment. It's about understanding the system, understanding the cycles, and positioning yourself accordingly. So if you're frustrated right now, I understand. The spread feels wide. The buybacks feel low. It's easy to question things. But when you start seeing that it isn't a failure of 90% silver, it's just the system working through the stress after a major run-up. We saw it hit generics. We are seeing it show up in eagles. And we're seeing it show up even more in 90% because of how the system prioritizes efficiency under pressure. That doesn't mean 90% is broken. It just means that you're finally seeing the part of the cycle that most people never pay attention to. And once you understand it, everything starts to make a lot more sense. Because this isn't the end of 90% silver, it's just the part that most people didn't see coming. I just started my own line of coffee, Joseph's Reserves It's Today Again coffee. Every morning is a gift. Not yesterday, not tomorrow, today. It's Today Again is a reminder that God has given us this day once more, with new mercy, new opportunity, and real work to be done. It's the moment to show up, build good habits, and take hold of what's been placed in front of us. Whether it's putting in the work, staying disciplined, saving consistently, or simply choosing to be faithful in the small things, today is where it starts. Encourage one another daily, as long as it is called today. Hebrews 3:13. So, take a breath, take a sip, and let's get to work. It's today again. You can now write me at Joseph's Reserves, 10160 Highway 242, Suite 800, number 401 in Conroe, Texas, zip code 77385. Make sure to include your information so I can write you back. If you like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Go down into the comment section to leave any comments or questions or catch up with the people that you've met within this community. Share the video to anyone you think may like it, and subscribe if you haven't already. But most of all, thank you so much for watching. And just remember, every ounce adds up. So no matter how small, just keep stacking.